The inside story on the issues that affect you and your community. This is Local 12 Newsmakers.
He was only 3 weeks old when we lost him. He was fussy one night, and my husband was holding him so I could catch some extra sleep before he had to get up and eat again. And my husband fell asleep with Charlie on his chest, and when he woke up, Charlie didn't.
Good morning and welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers. I'm Dan Hurley. Unfortunately, almost all of us know one or more families who have had an infant die. The pain is lifelong. A creative local report released last week threw light on this problem at a press conference by dramatically stringing booties on the clothesline representing the 95 children in Hamilton County who died before their first birthday last year. The stark reality is that Cincinnati and Hamilton County have significantly higher rates of children who die before their first birthday than the state as a whole or the national average. The city of Cincinnati has experienced 12.4 deaths per 1,000 births, although Hamilton County is lower at 9.9 deaths per 1,000. The national average is only 6.1 deaths per 1,000, less than half the rate of the city of Cincinnati. To address this issue, a local collaboration was formed last June. Cradle Cincinnati is a partnership between Hamilton County, the city of Cincinnati, all of the local health care systems, United Way, Closing the Healthcare Gap, and others. Hamilton County Commissioner Todd Portune and City Council member Wendell Young are the co-chairs. I am joined this morning by Ryan Adcock, the Executive Director of Cradle Cincinnati, and Renee Mahaffey Harris, the Executive Director for the Center for Closing the Health Gap, and Dr. Elizabeth Kelly, the Medical Director of the Women's Community Health Center at the University of Cincinnati Medical Center and Medical Director of Maternal and Infant Health at the Cincinnati Health Department. Welcome back and welcome to Newsmakers in various cases here. Ryan, let's begin by talking about these numbers that, we're more than double the national average. Now, is that just, we're an urbanized county and a city, and that's just the way all cities are, and you could go any place in the United States and find the same thing?
So if you compare us just to other urbanized counties, we're the 5th worst in the country.
We're still the 5th worst, even in urbanized counties.
So we have a unique problem here in Cincinnati.
Okay, and it's a unique problem that is significantly bigger than in other places.
It is. It is. We've spent the past 6 months asking the question why, and this is a harder question to get to than you might suspect. When we talk about infant health, it's actually very important to back up and think about pregnancy health, and even back up further and think about women's health in general in Cincinnati. This probably tells us something about the state of women's health here in Cincinnati. So we've looked deeply at the data, and we've discovered 3 big reasons why this is a problem. We have numbers that are off the charts in terms of spacing between pregnancies, which is important for things like premature birth.
Right.
We have high numbers of smoking during pregnancy, and we have triple the national average of sleep-related deaths, which we can talk more about.
Okay, we'll get to a lot of those issues. Dr. Kelly, I mean, you deal with this through the health department, you deal with it at the university, medical center. Is this something that has developed in recent years, or is this a long-standing, this data about Cincinnati, is this a long-standing situation?
This is a long-standing situation for us. We could probably look back about 15 or 20 years, but the numbers have remained pretty constant through that time.
And Renee, you deal with the community. Do you think, when you look at these numbers, were you surprised by anything? What is it that spoke particularly to you?
Well, the Center for Closing the Health Gap focuses on health disparities, and infant mortality is a health disparity. So I already knew that that was a huge factor nationally and locally, but being a part of this initiative of Cradle Cincinnati, we know now that the African American community is twice the average of the overall community in infant mortality rates, and therefore, you have to look into the community, the actual community where the women are living. Infant mortality is an indicator of the condition of the community. So what that tells us is that where people are living, there are factors that aren't necessarily controlled in the hospital.
And it seems to me these parallel
exactly
the study that was done and came out earlier in the middle of 2013 about life expectancy in different neighborhoods and the variation, and same thing, poverty, race, all came into play with that as well.
Right. Well, Robert Wood Johnson Foundation really has been speaking about that for some time now, that it's where you live that affects your health, and it's where you work, live, and play. And they really have focused on that issue, and the fact that we have to look at the lifestyles, the built environment, what support systems that exist, and we are a part of this initiative because we're going to focus on the actual condition of the individual and where they live, and what support systems they need, how you really assess what's in the neighborhood that can potentially be an access point, because women are coming from a neighborhood when they are pregnant, but before they get pregnant, they live in that community. So they have the birth, and they go back to that neighborhood. So it's something in the community, in the neighborhoods that they are living, that is not necessarily providing the level of support. So what we'd like to do is train and equip people in the community with more tools so that they can come up with strategies to support one another.
Well, let's take a look at some of the things that the report pointed out, and we'll let people know how to get to the entire report, because it's really worth reading. It's very visual. It's very easy. This is one that's easy to read. This area of making sure that there's better health during pregnancy, and that we have a full screen. One of these is your points that I just find fascinating. There should be 18 months between pregnancies, and if there are not, people who don't have 18 months between pregnancies, 368% increase in the possibility of an infant death before age 1. I mean, that's a huge number. Dr. Kelly, what is 18 months between pregnant? Does that mean 18 months between the birth of one child and the birth of the next child? What are we talking about there? What's the real spacing that we're talking about?
The space that we're talking about is the birth to becoming pregnant.
To becoming pregnant.
Right. And we medically call that interpregnancy interval. So one of the biggest contributors to infant death or infant mortality is preterm birth. And a contributor to preterm birth is the spacing between pregnancy, and the optimal time is more than 18 months, from delivery to becoming pregnant again.
The data actually revealed to us that it's the single most modifiable factor. So if there's one thing we can do differently that we have control over, this is it. And it's very related to the fact that over half of our local pregnancies are unintended. And in conversations with the center, we've had a lot of great conversations around there are reasons that might go beyond the obvious for unintended pregnancy. So we have women tell us that their boyfriends are the ones who are driving those decisions. We have
not wanting to use protection.
Not wanting to use protection in some cases, and there are access issues, which is where my mind immediately went, but those aren't the primary reason for this, and we don't even know all the reasons yet. So that's one of the reasons that the center is going to be so valuable to this work, is to help us really engage community members on that question.
Now, one of the things that I always like to do is compare. I always feel like if we just talk about Cincinnati, we're talking in a bubble. How does this look compared to other cities on this particular point? This intended or unintended pregnancy question, and then that relates to the spacing question.
Sure.
How do we look?
So if you compare us to a community like Boston, where they have very low infant mortality rates, they have a
city much larger than us, much more complex than we are.
Yep. They have unintended pregnancy rates of about 33%, and ours are over 50%. So there's a dramatic gap there that we want to close.
So What do you attribute that to?
Well, we conducted some focus groups just to really be able to better articulate, where women who are impacted by infant mortality, what their feelings are. And one of the factors that we learned is that there's an issue of trust. There's an issue of trust of the very medical provider that's delivering the services to them. And some of it's long-term, generational. People get their messages and who they trust from neighbors, grandmothers, aunts, uncles, and so our aunts and family, and that's who they're listening to. And so that means the education that we need to do is not just with that mother who's birth age, but also the parent or the aunt or grandmother, so that they understand some of the factors that are causing, that are increasing the rates of infant mortality, specifically within the African American community.
Mm-hmm. What about with doctors? Do we have to do any education with doctors on this?
I think we do, and I think one of the things that you talked about was, is this rate changing, and why is it coming to the forefront now that we're paying attention to this and looking at this? And I think we've developed a much broader understanding of the need to look outside of traditional medical care into modifiable behavioral risk factors, and then how we message that out. So yes, we want to do some very basic things up front, which is educating the doctors, the providers, and the community all together about what are these behavioral issues and how do we modify them. What are they?
This whole question of, you say it's not so much access to birth control, but when you bring up Boston, one of the first things I think of is, they're just as Catholic as we are, where, the official attitudes of the church, not that anybody pays attention to them very much. I'm a Catholic and I can say it. But they're just as Catholic as we are, yet the culture must be different. There's something different going on in Boston than there's going on in Cincinnati. So this question of changing the culture, changing the aunts and the people who are giving advice, not just the professionals, that's very complex, how we did that change. Let's move on. Also on that, in that area of pregnancy, another big question was the question of reducing obesity before pregnancy and also eliminating smoking during pregnancy. And those rates, 48%, 44% in terms of likelihood of increasing of infant death, those are very similar. So both of these, obesity before pregnancy, not just during, and smoking. Now, we hear about smoking all the time. Smoking is a problem, a health problem in general. How do we change it? How do we deal with it in this environment?
Sure. So a basic question that we want to ask ourselves is, are the women in our community healthy enough for a successful pregnancy before they're even pregnant? And so we do care about smoking during pregnancy, we do care about obesity during pregnancy, but it needs to back up into women's health in general. How do we change smoking? There's no low-hanging fruit in this issue. These are tough issues to tackle. What's currently being done, let me speak about sort of the current state of the medical system. A lot of doctors will ask a pregnant woman, are you smoking? She'll say yes, and they will say, don't do that. And then they kind of move on to the next question. We want to put much more rigor around that, offer much more services. A great place that you can start right now if you know a woman who's pregnant and who's trying to quit smoking is the Ohio Quit Line, which is 1-800-QUIT-NOW. But I'll let Elizabeth chat a little bit more about the kinds of things we want to do at the doctor's office.
So just to touch off the coming into pregnancy healthy, what we've learned is a lot of times what's happening is women are coming into the pregnancy unhealthy and then kind of saying, help me, fix me. So coming into the pregnancy healthy is vital. One of the leading causes of medically induced, a medical reason to have a preterm birth, is high blood pressure in pregnancy. Obesity is one of the major drivers of that. So it just threads all the way in. Smoking during pregnancy is really different than smoking outside of the pregnancy because there's an urgency to get someone to quit smoking. You can say to someone that's not pregnant, hey, we've got a quit date, let's try 6 months, 8 months. The highest impact for decreasing the chance of preterm birth or infant death, which both are contributors, or both of those have smoking as a contributor, is if a woman can stop smoking by the time she's in her first 4 months of pregnancy. So we really need
to become aware that you're pregnant. We have to become aware. And then you have to stop it.
And then we have to have the medical system and the community and our messaging all say, here are some ways that we can assist you to quit smoking that have been proven to be effective. And so part of the work that Cradle is going to do with all our collaborators is say, here's an evidence-based, here's medical evidence, and here's how we're going to roll this out.
The other thing this brings up is something Renee and I have talked a lot about, which is identity. And how do we get women in the community to feel like, you know, I am the kind of person who quits smoking during pregnancy. This matters to me. This matters to my community. This is a cultural norm. And that's a hard lift as well.
Right. Well,
and
that
I
is
just want to warn, I'm out of time, but
okay.
one last comment here about, because this is exactly what your organization works on.
Exactly. Obesity rates, as well as really meeting people where they are and equipping them with more the tools and really having them be a part of the solution. That's really the key. I think if we can involve the very people impacted in the solutions that we're talking about, I think we will change our infant mortality rates that have been the same for 100 years now. So. Okay, thank you very much for being here. There's a lot more in this report, and you can find that information at info at there we go, cradlecincinnati.org. I'm ahead of where we are in the script because there's so much more I hope to talk about. Stay tuned. After the break, we'll talk about a college in the Over the Rhine that is growing so fast it needs a new building. Stay right here. Welcome back. Everybody knows UC, NKU, XU, Cincinnati State, and Mount St. Joe. But how much do you know about Chatfield College? The main campus of Chatfield is in Brown County and devoted to educating rural Appalachian students. The second campus is in the Over the Rhine, a block from Findlay Market, and dedicated to educating non-traditional urban students.
Actually, to have several students come up to me and ask me for letters of recommendation when they are looking for first-time job employment. Two of these students were actually long-term prison sentences, so it was a huge hill to climb.
Chatfield College is a private Catholic two-year liberal arts college that offers associate arts degrees in liberal arts, business, early childhood education, and human services. It has grown so fast in the last several years that it has purchased a new building and is getting ready to start the conversion of that building. I am joined now by John Tafaro, the president of Chatfield College. Mr. Tafaro is an attorney by background and will become the president of the Cincinnati Bar Association in March, as if he didn't have enough to do to run a college. John, welcome to Newsmakers.
Thanks for having me, Dan.
One of the things that I find fascinating about Chatfield, given the larger discussion that's going on about higher education, is you have a real commitment to the liberal arts and traditional, that sort of traditional liberal arts. You're not a job training place, even though you're dealing with this non-traditional population, but you're not, it's not just about job training and getting people out in the workforce.
Well, that's right. We are a liberal arts school by design, and we have things that students want to take in music and art and philosophy and languages.
History?
History, of course, history, sciences. And we're trying to prepare students to go on to get a four-year degree at another school, and the majority of them, in fact, do that.
And why, given all of the discussion right now, including even the president, who made this comment within the past 10 days about art history, why is that commitment there? Why do you believe that?
Well, there are many people that think that a liberal arts background is great preparation for a job. We teach critical thinking and teamwork skills, and I think Shakespeare is relevant and Chaucer is relevant. And we have students come transfer to us from some career schools, and they're amazed that we have art and we have music. It's what's so exciting about the new campus. There's a beautiful little park next door. We're working with the park board to redevelop that, and I can foresee art students sketching and musical students singing and joining with the community there. And
you're going to be right across from the ballet.
We're right across from the ballet. We'll do some joint programming with those folks at the ballet. Have been very, very cooperative. It's really exciting.
You know, right now you're just off of Findlay Market. You're going to be moving not very far, and we have sort of an overview that lets people know. You're going to be close to the intersection, and you can see this on the screen now, close to the intersection of Central Parkway and Liberty. And if people know where the ballet is, right?
It's a terrific location. There's high traffic in each direction. We're right on a bus line. In fact, there are 9 bus lines within a few blocks of where we are, 15 bus stops. The majority of our students do come by bus. There's also lots of parking around, and it's going to be very, very visible. And that art studio and the dance studio are going to be visible from the outside as well.
We have a drawing of what the new building, the new campus, main building is going to look like, and we put that up here. But let's you and I talk about why this new building is necessary. What's happened in terms of enrollment at Chatfield over the last 4 or 5 years?
4 or 5 years, we've really grown rapidly. We've gone from 74 students at Findlay Market to upwards of 375 in a given year.
Wow.
We're serving 620 some odd students each year now at both campuses. And I think our message is resonating. And college is certainly affordable. And the president does talk about education a lot. The fact is, Dan, that the notion that college is unaffordable is really a myth. College is affordable. With Pell Grants, we have more than 20 private scholarships. There's something called OCOG. Anyone who wants to come to Chatfield can have a job if he or she wants a job. And the investment pays. The statistics about unemployment and about earnings over the course of your life, college is a really good thing. Now, certain people should go to trade schools, and welding is a great career, and carpentry, and there's a place for someone.
Cincinnati State.
And those are wonderful. Cincinnati State, Gateway, they do great work. We're the only, though, faith-based liberal arts 2-year college or associate degree college. Sometimes it takes students more than 2 years, and that's fine. Our students work, our students, things happen, they'll skip a semester because life happens, and the message is that's okay. But you're better off coming to school, certainly finishing high school, and then going on to some college and hopefully a bachelor's degree.
On this affordability question and the growth of the college, you know, there's been a lot of criticism of for-profit places, for-profit colleges, of getting students in, getting them to take loans, pay the college, and then nobody ever comes to, you know, they don't stick with it, and they're just basically getting the money in. How do you respond to that? It's
a tragedy, and students come to us having gone to private, for-profit colleges with this story. We really sit down with every student and we explain, this is a grant, a Pell Grant, which you don't have to pay back. This is a loan. It's a very serious matter. So we try to do whatever we can to eliminate or reduce those loans and counsel students about their debt. Part of what's going on at the federal level with Title IV is trying to take some action against some of these predatory for-profits that may or may not have the student's best interest at heart. But again, as a faith-based school, and we have people from all faith traditions, everyone's welcome at Chatfield. But because we're faith-based, we care about every individual, we spend time with that individual, we provide extra support if needed. Sometimes, many times, our students come in unprepared for college-level courses, so we have remedial courses and tutoring and advising. So part of our Ursuline tradition, we're an Ursuline school, so all your viewers out there that have some familiarity with the Ursuline schools, Ursuline Academy, St. Ursula Academy, the Villa, our Ursuline tradition and our heritage talks about the whole person and the body and the soul and the mind, and it's also consistent with liberal arts. So we are different.
You know, I've been there to talk in individual classes and see some things. It's all about the individual people. The students that you meet at Chatfield are not the same type of students you're going to meet over at Xavier or you know, Thomas More or whatever. These are really different kinds of students.
They are. They tend to be a little older. They may have had some issues in the past which have prevented them from going to college, but they're really inspiring because they're ready now to do something to change their lives, change the lives of their families. Many have children, and then we get them ready to go to Xavier or Mount St. Joe or UC. So it's a wonderful environment. Our instructors are really committed as well. You have to be, and you know it being the gift of, of a teacher, and it's just a great place.
Well, I want to make sure people know how to get in touch with you. If you want to get in touch with Chatfield, you can contact them by phone. The OTR campus is 513-921-9856, or check out the website at chatfield.edu. John, thank you very much.
Dan, thank you.
Thank you for all the work that you're doing
Thank you.
on all fronts. Bar Association too. Thank you for making Local 12 Newsmakers a part of your Sunday morning. Next week, efforts to grapple with the challenge of the underfunded pension fund in the city of Cincinnati, an issue that is emblematic of the pension crisis in the United States. Have a good week. Stay right.